Good morning. I'm Rebecca Bryant from OCLC Research, and I'll be joining this presentation by Allison Hitchens and Ian Milligan from the University of Waterloo and Annie Rao from Syracuse University. We're going to be talking about case studies in cross-institutional collaboration. So, libraries today support an array of research support activities, from supporting bibliometrics and research impact to research data management, as well as digital humanities, scholarly communications, copyright, and so forth. In all of these cases, research support is not just a library endeavor. In fact, it's an enterprise task. And we find that working across campus can be really difficult. I've heard people say implementing a campus RIM system is like herding flaming cats, or that the technical stuff is easy compared to all the social stuff. This is really the counterpoint to technical interoperability, which is why we've started using the term social interoperability as a better way to describe this. And in fact, I define this as the creation and maintenance of working relationships across individuals and organizational units that promotes collaboration, communication, and mutual understanding. This was actually the topic of an OCLC research report that I co-authored along with Annette Dortmund and Brian Lavoie in 2020. And it's available open access on the OCLC research website. One of the things that I found really useful in the course of pursuing this research was the previous work of systems engineering expert and former university leader William Rouse, who describes universities as complex adaptive systems. So first, universities are characterized by nonlinear dynamic behavior. This means that people may respond in disproportionate ways. Faculty may be oblivious to a lot of things, ignoring, not reading your emails until they actually notice one, and then boom, you have a situation to manage. Secondly, people have a lot of freedom to be self-directed and act as independent agents. In fact, faculty members are free to openly oppose an array of organizational efforts. These independent agents often have differing or even conflicting goals, and disagreements are common, and especially among faculty can become heated. Not only are people independent agents, but they're smart independent agents who learn and adapt in this environment, often working at odds with each other. And this is where the herding flaming cats part comes in. Furthermore, while there is an existing hierarchy of colleges or faculties, departments, and so forth, there's also a lot of self-organization independent of the existing hierarchies. So yes, more chaos. Finally, there's no single point of control. This means that universities are not sites where mandates usually work. They aren't characterized by a command and control system. Instead, they work through incentives and inhibitions. So social interoperability is really about getting everyone on the same bus and moving in the same direction. So in our report, we offer some strategies and tactics that librarians and others working on campus can apply to improve their social interoperability and ultimately to make their research support efforts more successful. So start by securing buy-in. Know your audience, learn to speak their language, and offer concrete solutions to their problems. Constantly be building relationships. Find opportunities to connect and ultimately leverage shared staff or utilize embedded staff to further strengthen and cement those relationships. Always be troubleshooting. Find people who are connectors who can help you build more relationships on campus, manage difficult personalities and resistance, and find ways to sustain your energy. Perhaps most importantly is for our librarians to be confident in your value and the fact that you know things that no one else on campus does, and you offer specific value in all of these efforts. So with that, that's the high-level overview. I'm going to now hand it over to Annie Rao, who's going to talk about the efforts at Syracuse.
Hello, my name is Annie Rao, and I'm the head of collections and research services at Syracuse University Libraries. I'm going to share with you a case study of my department's reorganization and how it has facilitated social interoperability between my department, campus, and library partners. My department is the Department of Research and Scholarship. It is made up of academic liaison librarians and functional roles that include collection development, open scholarship, and research data services librarian. When I assumed the role of department head in 2019, the department was organized like this, with all members of the department reporting to me. Yikes! This organization had been unsustainable for a number of years under previous management. So when I took on this role, it was time to make a change. But my administration and I were struggling with what that change would look like. As I said, most of the department is made up of academic liaison librarians. When we think about academic liaisons, especially when there are many of them in the same department, it is easy to think about those roles as all being very similar, with just the subject specialty distinguishing them from each other. But in reality, academic liaison work looks very different discipline to discipline. Some of that may be due to the strengths, interests, or preferences of the person in that role, and other differences are due to the needs of that particular discipline. When we began thinking of ways to reorganize the department, we began thinking about a classic division of academic liaisons by broad subject areas: arts and humanities, social sciences, STEM, and then perhaps group all the non-liaisons together. But that was going to create teams of very different sizes. Syracuse University has strong and large social science programs, which would produce one very large subdivision with a tiny little STEM team of 2. And that was not going to produce a more even department structure. So we began looking closer at the patterns that emerged when we looked at how the liaisons really spent their time and effort, and settled on a model that was based on these 5 focus areas of the department, aligned with goals from the library's strategic plan. Today, the department's organization looks like this, with 4 teams focused on subject instruction, research impact, digital and open scholarship, and collections, all grounded in liaison work. Each team lead supervises between 3 and 5 librarians, and each team has a dedicated graduate assistant. There were 4 members of the department looking for additional leadership and supervisory experience who were promoted with appropriate compensation to lead librarian roles, and the other librarians were assigned to teams based on their interests and strengths. Each department member was able to rank order their team preference before being assigned to a team, and each member was assigned to their first or second choice team. While the librarians were rank ordering their preferences, I also took a stab at organizing everyone based on what I knew about each of their liaison portfolios in advance of this ranking process, and the results were almost exactly the same. So what does this let us do? To answer that, I'm going to focus on our research impact team. Prior to this reorganization in 2020, what a time to start a department reorg, we had provided a few ad hoc services that could be categorized as research impact, including administering our RIM system, providing bibliometric reports or training to support individual faculty members when applying for promotion and tenure, answering inquiries from the Office of Research on bibliometric tools, and collaborating to draw attention to public access requirements for funded research. But the reorganization gave us a chance to focus the attention of 4 liaisons on these services in the time that they were not directly supporting their academic liaison community. The objectives of the team are as follows. They were tasked with developing knowledge and services in support of university research at both the individual and institutional levels. They were asked to understand and communicate the tools available and administer and update those tools as they're allowed to do so. They've been asked to understand and communicate different metrics and those metrics limitations, to create help guides for individuals to utilize library tools to communicate impact, They've been tasked with responding to university requests for bibliographic information and to share best practices for responsible research assessment. And while not explicitly outlined on this slide, an objective of this team is to serve as a primary contact from the libraries to the Office of Research. And as the team has developed, they've been able to articulate what services they provide for different audiences. Services for individuals include tenure and promotion planning and reporting, guidance of research profiles, assistance identifying interdisciplinary publishing opportunities, and serving as team members in evidence synthesis work, such as systematic reviews. The services that they provide to groups, such as schools, colleges, departments, or institutes, include support with grant compliance reporting, group research profiles or data for research highlighting, or web pages highlighting research, setting up dashboards or alerts, sharing disciplinary best practices for research reporting, and using library resources for finding funding opportunities. The services provided to the university as a whole, or the university's administration, include Scopus record cleanup, administering the research information management system, reporting on intramural grants, and promoting responsible research assessment. The team has been able to offer many of these services in collaboration with the Office of Research, including our RIM system administration, joint training sessions, and funding opportunity workshops. And there have been many benefits of this constant collaboration, which include reaching a broader audience for our events due to co-advertisement and endorsement of each other's work. We've also seen an increase of use in certain electronic resources as entirely new campus populations focused on research administration have begun using them. We've been able to use our combined talents. Librarians serve as intramural grant and limited submission reviewers, lending their expertise, their subject expertise to these endeavors. And research professionals serve as reviewers or letter writers for the librarian promotion process. We've also been able to intervene and refer as appropriate at all phases of the research process. So frequently, our research colleagues will work with researchers on the early phases of the research project when they're seeking out funding and writing grants, and are able to refer to the libraries as appropriate then. The libraries regularly see researchers later in the process when they're looking for help with copyright or what to do with their data or their publications. And we can also loop in the Office of Research on that step of the process. But this is not to say that our collaboration has come without challenges. We've had to learn the language of the different roles of our colleagues in the research enterprise, just as they've had to learn the roles of the librarians. We have different work patterns when it comes to file sharing, scheduling, who to include on an email, and more. But as we continue to work with this office on a regular basis, these challenges have been smoothed out, leaving time for the meat of the work that we do together. And just as the research impact team is improving the social interoperability between the libraries and the Office of Research, the other three teams in my department each have defined campus partners with whom they work. And by dedicating specific individuals to working with these units, we get to move past the social interoperability issues sooner and move into the heart of the work that we do together. Here you'll find my contact information, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions you have about reorganizing a department of liaisons or collaborating with an Office of Research on some of your shared goals. But for now, will be traveling to the opposite side of Lake Ontario to hear from my colleagues at the University of Waterloo.
Thanks, Annie. Now Ian and I are going to talk about successful relationships and partnerships and how we plan to build on those to enhance research data management services at Waterloo. In 2021, the three federal funding agencies in Canada, referred to as the tri-agencies, released their RDM policy to make sure that research data collected through use of public funds are managed responsibly and, where possible, made available for reuse for others. So for institutions, this means we have to create and post our RDM strategy by March. And researchers can expect to create data management plans for their grant applications, and in future they will need to deposit their data. So far, the rollout on the researcher requirements has been fairly slow, starting with a few pilot grants requiring DMPs. So we have a little bit of time to work on our strategy and our implementation while we figure out the best way to meet our researcher needs. So in response to this policy, back in July 2021, we put together a cross-campus working group to form the institutional strategy. And the success of this working group, I think, builds on a strong history of cross-campus partnerships and relationship building. I'm going to speak from the library perspective on this. The library has been developing good relationships with various units on campus over the past 10 years through work on major initiatives on the research portfolio. And these opportunities have helped build trust in the library's expertise and also formed individual or personal relationships, which makes it a lot easier for me to pick up the phone or pick up the Teams chat, which is usually the case with Ian and I, and reach out to discuss problems and opportunities, whether that's related to research data management, to ORCID, to open science, to core research facilities, to things we're hearing about our researchers on grants. We know that we can have those discussions and come to solutions together. So the examples on this slide list the various partners, and you can see a core theme of Library, Office of Research, and our central IT, but still including important interactions with people from within our 6 faculties on the admin side and on the faculty side in those units. And then the work of our liaison librarians, of course, has also been important in strengthening our research relationships and trust through their contributions to the workshops being done with graduate studies and the Office of Research, and the successes they've had on individual research teams. So to set the stage for our strategy, here is some of what we've learned from talking to our researchers. We've learned that there are many data-related services, tools, and resources available already for our researchers, but they aren't coordinated, and that's just on campus, never mind what might be available provincially, nationally, or from commercial partners. Our researchers value both centralized and decentralized resources, which means we kind of need to keep both models for use. And they found that there's too many confusing and conflicting data-related policies, mandates, and expectations, both within the university and disciplinary. So for example, we often hear the questions about how does open data fit with the concepts of privacy and research security. And when we think about what we've heard from our researchers and reflect on that, I think Rebecca's slide on universities as complex adaptive systems really resonates. And all 3 of these characteristics, nonlinear dynamic behavior, self-organization, non-single points of control, really speak to the siloed nature we see at Waterloo. And we'll need to figure out how to work within this system while trying to provide some single points, perhaps not of control, but of information collaboration and understanding so that our researchers can expect a baseline of support and can more easily navigate the array of resources available to them at point of need. And what I'd really like to see is that as they use the networks that they have as researchers, that we in the institution have enough information from each other that no matter who they reach out to, we can point them in the right direction. And so setting that up for what we need to work within, I'm going to turn it over to Ian to talk about what we've been thinking about in our strategy.
Thanks, Alison. So what will this look like on campus? Well, like many institutions, and I'm sure if I was presenting this in person, there'd be many knowing nods, the University of Waterloo is a very decentralized institution. We have 6 faculties, each of which has their own faculty research office, their own faculty computing office, and of course these are all focused on varying levels. So I'm originally from an arts faculty, because of the traditional research needs of, humanities and social sciences researchers, their IT unit might be more focused on undergraduate education, help desk type activities, whereas in a faculty that might have, say, a School of Computer Science, you would have a faculty computing office that is really more traditionally focused on data research services, cloud computing infrastructure, etc. Now, of course, with the growing push towards interdisciplinary research, and in my own neck of the woods, the digital humanities and, critical type studies, even some of the STEM fields, we're seeing a blurring of those lines. So here at the University of Waterloo, when it comes to RDM, you've got a big cast of characters who would actually do the work. You've got staff in our central IT unit. We've got staff in the Office of Research. We have librarians. We have faculty support officers, not to mention a soup of consortiums and specialized data positions in some, but not all, our institutional centers and institutes. And some of these people work well together, and some of them probably don't know that there's anybody else doing the kind of work that they do on campus. So when it comes time for us to look at setting up an RDM strategy, our goal is not the centralization of services. I don't think that's going to fly in a decentralized campus, and it doesn't really recognize that there's already people doing the work. So it's not centralization of services, but really the coordination of services, of making sure people can work together to help meet this new requirement. We use the metaphor of breaking down silos. Nobody likes silos. I feel bad for the farmers. Nobody likes silos. We want to break them down because we want to provide services. As I say on the slide, we really want, when people see that they're going to have to do a data management plan, they don't panic. And they know where to go. And they're not going to go through that sort of thought process that many researchers, I think, go through, where they go, is this the library? Is this the Office of Research? Is this the Faculty of Arts? Who do I go to? And as Alison notes, it's good to know who to contact to. And more importantly, if you don't contact the right person, if we have a community that is coordinated, they will have enough of a community to say, you reached out to me in the Office of Research. Not the best question for me, but I know this wonderful person in the library, this wonderful person in IST who will help with you. And crucially, if we want to treat data as a strategic asset, it's going to require collaboration and coordination. Of course, if you want to bridge silos and break them down, you have to build relationships between them. And so, building on those, the tactics laid out by Rebecca, we really focused on building relationships outwards to multiple stakeholders beyond just the library, the Office of Research, and IST, and wanted to build community with some examples of consultations already begun. So we did this in 3 ways you see on this slide here. First, we had to secure buy-in. And we talked about this as the roadshow. So Ian and Alison, fortunately, I guess we're in the middle of the pandemic, so this was mostly on Microsoft Teams. But we talked to a lot of people. We talked to all 6 faculties and their leadership teams. We talked to the Senate Subcommittee on Grad and Research. We talked to the Research Leaders Council, which is executive directors and the associate deans of research. We talked to computing committees, both on the research and the services side, the 3 research ethics boards who deal with animals, clinical research, and human research, and also the affiliated universities who were federated with the University of Waterloo. And a lot of this was listening and getting the sense of the pulse of things. What hadn't we thought about? What are the impact on graduate students, for example, who will be doing a lot of the implementation? What about the burden on researchers? How could we provide support with resourcing levels, but also respect disciplinary autonomy? What questions could we learn that would be above our pay grades, but might be useful for the federal government to hear about? Secondly, we needed to build relationships. We formed a researcher advisory board with roughly 2 researchers from each faculty, but also many other stakeholders. Our goal here was to have STEM researchers, humanists, health researchers, pharmacy researchers who could speak from their perspectives. And crucially, when we show them the draft strategy, they can tell us that it hasn't broken their research and that it's not going to be received very, very poorly, because our goal is to support. And we've also had focus groups including data managers, IT professionals, and Indigenous researchers. And finally, we troubleshoot. We're preparing for a town hall at the stage where our strategy has been taken shape but is not finalized, and an opportunity to present, to provide a website, and to get feedback from our entire community. And crucially, all of this will set the stage for implementation. And as you've seen here, we always work together on all of this. And so I'll thank Alison again, and now over to Rebecca, who will bring our engaging panel to a close.
Thanks, Ian. So just a few takeaways to wrap up our conversation today. As we heard from all of our panelists, it's important to be relentless connectors with lots of people on campus. There are lots of stakeholders in research support. Make sure you're connecting with all of them and pulling them into your efforts. This takes time. So be committed to investing and even scheduling time to make this happen. Note, as Annie described, that you may need to make structural changes in your library to optimize your impact, because of how much time that it can take. You may need to be very strategic in how you do this. This may be about coordination, not centralization. The library is one stakeholder of many in research support, but through all of this, this is a critical way to forward the value proposition of the library to all of those other stakeholders. And finally, as really detailed by Ian and Allison, social interoperability begets more social interoperability as you build those relationships on campus. I encourage you to take a look at the Social Interoperability Report on the OCLC website, available at this link here. And I also encourage you to go to Twitter and share your local social interoperability with this hashtag. And with that, we conclude this presentation for the Charleston Conference, and we'll move into conversation together. Thank you.